and gentlemen, please give it up for Stacy Abrams.
Hello. So I didn't get the memo about the yellow, which is actually, it's my favorite color, but the red travels well, so that's what I'm wearing. It is my honor to be here with you today. And, okay, so we're going to do something. Y'all are about to annoy everybody at your tables. So I'm going to put the microphone down. Y'all all take the pictures you want, and then we're going to put your phones down. Ready? But thank you. So I grew up in Gulfport, Mississippi. Okay, I've never had anyone clip. It's a lovely place. But in Mississippi in the 1970s and 80s, if you didn't have cable, you had two television stations, ABC and PBS. In this current environment, you have ABC, and you hope you can find PBS. But the reason that mattered was that when you wanted to watch television on Saturdays, Saturday morning, you watched all the cartoons, and then there was this lull, and you switched over to PBS and hoped that they had something good on. But by the middle of the day, the only option was Wide World of Sports. I was not a Wide World of Sporter, but I really liked TV, so I would sit there and with my dad, and we would watch some things. And then one day I was watching, and there were these people, and they were driving really, really fast. I discovered Formula One racing. And I was like, I want to do that. And then my mother explained that the cars cost more than our town, and I let that go. But I loved the idea of the speed, of the precision, of the courage it took to race around. And it never left me. And I have paid the state of Georgia enough in speeding tickets to prove that the ambition has never left me. And when I got the invitation to come here today, I started thinking about why I was so attracted to Formula One racing, but also why I never thought about pursuing it. Because if you watched the end of those races, if you watched Monaco, if you watched any of the races, when people got out of those cars, they never looked like me. When I would ask my mother, the research librarian, and my dad, the sports aficionado, to name black race car drivers, they couldn't name any. If you asked for women, that was just a non-starter. And it struck me as problematic, but not enough that I thought I should do something about it. As I continued to grow up and I became more involved in social justice issues because my parents had this belief that they and their 6 children could fix Mississippi, my mom and dad would take us out to volunteer every Saturday, which meant that I lost watching the Super Friends. I still had Wide World of Sports. But my mom and dad would take us out to volunteer. They did so because they believed that we had an obligation to take care of our community. My parents told us we had 3 jobs: go to church, go to school, and take care of each other. They said go to church because they wanted us to have a faith, a tradition that was larger than ourselves. They wanted us to believe in something. They said go to school because they wanted us to know something. Yeah, my dad would say they can take your job and they can take your house, but they can never take what's in your mind. And then they said take care of each other. Part of that was that they had 6 children and they needed the free babysitting. But the larger impulse was that you had to take care of the world around you. And so they would take us out to volunteer, and we would point out to them as we were in a soup kitchen or a homeless shelter. I'm like, you guys do know we're poor too, right? And my parents would say, my mother was very erudite, and she was like, no matter how little we have, there's someone with less, your job is to serve that person. my dad, being more succinct, would say, having nothing is not an excuse for doing nothing. And so I grew up with this ethic that I needed to do something about the problems that I saw. I need to do something about the challenges in the world. And I thought politics eventually became the space I could operate in. I wanted to start as a bureaucrat, but politicians wouldn't do what I told them, so I had to join them and run for office myself. But when I did so, my ambitions were small. The only politician that I could imagine myself being was possibly the highest aspiration was to be the mayor of Atlanta. It had never happened that a woman was the mayor of a major city, certainly not a black woman. And having grown up in Mississippi and come of age in Georgia, Atlanta was the biggest place I could imagine where if I possibly could do this job, that would be where it was. It never occurred to me to think any bigger. My ambitions were limited by what I could see. And they were fed not a flood of opportunity, but they were fed a paucity of imagination. You see, when we don't know what is possible, or worse, when we see possibility and we don't see ourselves in that possibility, it's absurd to imagine we could be. But I grew up with 2 parents and 5 brothers and sisters who encouraged absolute imagination, who encouraged remarkable creativity, who said, like my dad said, don't tell yourself no, let someone else do it. And so for me, the space of walking into politics became the ambition. I ran for state legislature, got that job. 4 years later, I became the leader of my caucus. I should have noticed that they let me have the job after 4 years, but that was because we'd lost every statewide office. We were in our lowest nadir. And those around me thought, well, yeah, you can have the job because there's no one there. You're not going to be good at it because you can't win. They give you the title minority leader. They call you leader to make you feel good. They tell you you're minority so you don't forget your place. And the day I got the job, I stood before my caucus and I said, look, I've been a minority for a very long time. I am really good at it. And they voted for me. I beat someone who'd been there a lot longer. I got the job, and I looked around, and we were in debt. We had the fewest number of caucus members in the history of the state of Georgia for our party, and we were on a downward slide. And for most, that was a reason to despair, but for me, it was a reason to dream. It was a reason to dream because when I look at you, I know that 18% of the workforce is comprised of women of color, but only 6% of the automotive industry has put women into any position. And that is a reason for despair unless you realize that just means you got a ceiling that is so high above your head, you don't even need to look at it yet. There's space to grow, and when I realized we only had 60 members, that could have been a reason to despair, but that just meant I had a lot of space, a lot of room to grow. We have got to invert the paradigms they give us. They tell us what we don't have so we can never imagine what's possible. They tell us what we're not so we can never construct who we are. And I'm here today because I refuse to believe that paradigm. I refuse to live by the notion that I am limited by your imagination and that I am constrained by your capacity. I can do what I believe because I have the responsibility to be what I want to see. And the reason I accepted the invitation to be here today, even though no one has ever let me race a car on a street, I got to go to the Porsche track. I'll talk about that later. But the reason I did this was because when I saw who you were, I told my staff I needed to be here. For some, the question of coming to talk to a network of women in automotives, of women of color in automotives, does not necessarily comport with who I'm known to be. But it's exactly where I should be. It is exactly where I should be. Because you are women of ambition who need to dare to be more than they tell you you are. You are women who have legitimate fears of what you see, but you refuse to be constrained by those fears. And you are women who can mentor each other into power. And that's what this luncheon is about. But more importantly, that's what this organization is about. I spent the last few months working on the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion on DEI. And that happened because I applied for this job a couple of times and they kept telling me no. You see, when my belief and my ambition said that I didn't need to be the mayor of a city, which is a noble and important job, I should be the governor of the state where that city sits. When I became the first black woman in American history to be the nominee for a major party, that was not a cause for celebration. It was a cause for concern, because why did it take 240 years for that to be true? But the reality is it took that long because we'd never been told we could imagine that much by the people who wanted us to never believe we could have what is possible. And when I stood for that office, I was incredibly proud of the campaign I ran, and we came really close. So close that I tried again 4 years later. The gap was a little wider the second time I didn't get the job, and for many people, that was a reason for me to sit down and shut up. There are many people who wish that I would just leave the stage and go about my business. But my business is belief. My business is opportunity. My business is helping us see that we are entitled not to more, we are entitled to everything. That is what we are. And I've been focused on DEI since 2023 because I heard the Supreme Court tell us no. I heard the Supreme Court for the third time say that it is not our right to control our destiny. You see, they started it with Shelby v. Holder when they said that the Voting Rights Act wasn't necessary anymore because racism was gone. Then they repeated it with the Dobbs decision when they told women that we don't get to control our bodies or control our futures because it was getting really annoying that we were controlling the future. And then the third was Students for Fair Admissions when they said we were learning too much, that women of color were getting too educated and too uppity. And the thing of it is, you don't have to pass laws and pass decisions if you're already winning. The attacks on DEI are not because we are losing, it's because we are thriving. That's why they're afraid. And I want their fear to be real. You see, they're afraid of diversity because it means all people. It means that every woman in this room and the few good men you let in here should be committed to the American dream. It's about equity because equity simply means fair access to opportunity. And inclusion means that we respect the belonging of all. And so I say to anyone who's opposed to DEI, which value do you disagree with? Are you afraid of diversity because you want only uniformity? Are you concerned about equity because you believe that unfairness should be the law of the land? Is inclusion terrifying to you because you believe exclusion is the only way you can get what you got? The foundational values of this nation say that we should not just be defending DEI, we should be expanding DEI, because when we do, we win. But what does that mean for you in this space and in this industry and in this moment? Outside of this room, there's a lot going on. We are a nation that is rushing headlong into tyranny, where authoritarianism is not something that's far off. It is occupying our homes. It is occupying our capital city. It is changing the way we see ourselves. And it is seductive to decide that what's happening in this room has nothing to do with what's going on out there, but it's all the same thing. Because we live multifaceted lives. And we don't have the luxury of assuming that if we're silent and focus on our thing, that nothing will hurt us. And I'm not calling anyone into partisanship, I'm calling you into patriotism. Because there's nothing more patriotic than our success. When women of color succeed, we don't just rise, we lift everyone else up with us. That is why your success is necessary. Your success is vital because when you win, communities win. When you win, the nation wins. When you win, the world wins. And those who are afraid of your success know that when you win, they may have to work a little harder. They may have to actually compete. Let's make them. Let's make them have to fight a little bit harder and not just assume it is theirs because they showed up. Let's make them defend their ideas the way we have to defend our presence. Let's make them understand that we all succeed when the least of us, when the most vulnerable of us, when the most marginalized of us, when that person rises, an army follows. That's why your success is so vital to me. And in this moment where success feels so remote, when this room is bigger than it was 4 years ago, but it's not as big as it could be, we've got to do some work. And so I'm going to give you 3 homework assignments. The first is I need you guys to be ambitious. Say ambitious. You all have to believe that you are entitled to more. For so many of you, you are so worried about rocking the boat that you forget that you're drowning. We have to believe that we are not just entitled to rock the boat, we're entitled to own the boat, build a bigger boat, and use that as our rowboat to get to our yacht. That is our opportunity. Your ambition should not be limited by what you have. It should be limited only by what you can imagine. But when we start to constrain ourselves before anyone else can tell us, we stop our dreaming too soon. Ambition is a superpower. It is the way that we construct the world we need to see. I hear so many people talk about, well, when this is over, we're going to build back what they've broken. I don't want to build back what was broken. I want to build what we should have had in the first place. That's ambition. I don't want to simply reconstruct the wrong. I want to construct the right. That's what ambition demands. And you sit at an intersection of opportunity and clarity that few understand because you actually know who you are. You are the women of color in the automotive network. That's who you are. You call yourselves WOCAN. I would say we can. You know what you can do. And when you know that, then your ambition should not simply be to fill this room, but to fill the imagination of every young girl who's watching Lewis Hamilton and wondering, where is Louise? Who is watching those who are taking the world by storm and asking, where do I get my seat? So your first job is what? Your second job is fear. Say fear. Now, most people are like, why would she say fear? I believe in fear. Fear is not something to worry about or to pretend you don't have. I used to give the speech about being fearless, and then I realized I was just wrong. Fear is my friend. I take my fear out to lunch. I find out its favorite wine. I get it dessert. Because fear is a warning system. What we are afraid of tells us what's holding us back from our opportunity. But when we avoid fear, when we pretend we don't have fear, when we try to evade fear, then fear wins. Because if we are not controlling fear, fear is controlling us. So when that opportunity for advancement comes up and you don't put your name in the ring because, well, no one like you has had it before, that's fear making your decision, not you. When you see an opportunity and you don't go after it because you might fail, that's fear making the decision, not you. I have failed twice on a national stage. I am the best loser I have ever met. Because I'm not afraid of losing. When losing becomes the governor of what I do, and I use that intentionally, when losing controls my decisions, then I'm not making any choices. I embrace my fear because the thing of it is, no matter what it is you fear, it's probably not as bad as you think it is. I lost twice for a job I desperately wanted. And in the process, I galvanized millions of people to take democratic power they didn't know they held. I got women to think that they could be in charge of the world. So I may not have gotten the job, but that doesn't exempt me from the work. I didn't lose, I just didn't win. But too often we think that fear is a reason not to act. Fear is the reason to charge forward. Fear is how we make our list of things to avoid and things to fix and things to know. Fear tells us where do we push a little harder to see what's on the other side, because too often fear is not about blocking us from pain. It's about blocking us from promise. We stop ourselves. We start to have that little imagining, and we stop ourselves. We're like, well, it's because we don't think that we deserve what's on the other side. So understand your fear. Write it down, deconstruct it, spend time with it. And then when you're ready, invite it to come along with you, not as a way to hold you back, but a way to drive you forward. Fear should be your fuel. Fear should be your friend. Your third responsibility is money. Say money. I am looking at a room of people who are all thinking about what they wish they had and how they can't afford it. I spend a lot of my time in rooms like that. I've become well known in the political space and nonprofit space. I'm pretty prolific at raising certain kinds of money. I am terrible at raising capital for business ventures. I'm good at raising political money. I'm good at raising philanthropic dollars. But I've never really been comfortable and confident in my ability to raise capital. And for many of you, you don't want to simply move up in the automotive industry. You want to dominate it. You want to own your own thing. You want to drive your future. But you stop yourself because you don't have the money. And you look at your friends and your family and you think they don't have the money either. Why are you spending somebody else's money for them? We have to stop deciding what we can have before we decide to ask for what we need. And often what we need is not the capital itself, but the confidence that the capital should be ours. If WOCAN in the next year doesn't create its own fund, so it's investing in your dreams and investing in the change that you need to see, you're not spending your capital wisely. Because in this room are women who understand what a small bit of investment can yield. Women who can invest in each other. You don't have to be able to write a 6-figure check when a 5-figure check added 10 times gets you exactly the same thing. I'm here to tell you to invest in one another. Because if this room invested in each other, you won't have to fill a room next year. You'll fill an entire hotel. But you've got to believe that you're entitled to do so. Now, not everyone is clapping. Because some of you are thinking, well, that's not what I want. But if you want more women employed in this industry, if you want more women controlling this industry, if you want more women dominating this industry, then you've got to own this industry. Much better. You've got to believe that you are entitled to the investment. Because $5,000 might sound like a lot, but when it is multiplied and invested, that's how they got where they are. That's how they own what they own, because they believed in each other enough to risk their capital and risk their trust because they thought that the upside was more important than the downside. We keep waiting for someone to save us, but we've got to save ourselves. And we've got to invest in ourselves because that's how we prove that we believe in ourselves. So we're going to start with what? Say it again. We're going to start with what? And then we're going to do what? Talk about. And finally, we're going to invest in what? And if we do those things, if we believe in our ability, if we see our future, then you cannot fail because we can, because WOCAN. Thank you so much.